And so this was a lesson for me in relinquishing control and remembering that sometimes life has different plans for us than we have for ourselves. And sometimes the more we fight, the harder things become. Hello and welcome to today's episode. Today we're going to be talking about postpartum healing, both physically, emotionally, spiritually, kind of the whole picture of what it looks like to be a human after you create a human. So, first thing that I want to talk about is not so much the physical side. We're going to talk about the physical side and kind of what to eat and supplements that I think are helpful. But for those of you that have listened to a few other episodes of mine, you know that I had a C section with my daughter, and it was a completely opposite experience to what I had planned. If you're curious, I have a whole episode on what it's like to give birth in a Portuguese public hospital that you can go listen to. But basically, nothing went the way that I had planned. And after having my daughter, I actually had a few friends reach out and say they had very similar experiences that, they had this beautiful plan for their birth and nothing went the way that they thought it was going to. And a few of them told me that they were really struggling with that experience, that they felt like something was taken from them. And while I completely understand that, because there was a part of me that felt that way too, I didn't feel as much that way because I think I chose to see the experience of birth as a ultimate learning opportunity. And so I tried very hard to dig a little bit deeper to understand what was it that my baby was trying to teach me with this pretty difficult, pretty non-ideal birth experience. So, my first piece that I want to talk about when we're talking about postpartum healing is really working through your birth experience. No matter how it went, whether you planned on giving birth in the hospital and you ended up, um, maybe you didn't even make it to the hospital. It can go both ways, or you had a beautiful home birth planned and it ended up being a very medicalized birth, whatever it may be, working through your experience, revisiting it through fresh lens, thinking about, is there part of me that's sad or that feels hurt from this? And how can I reframe this so that I can move forward from this and not carry this pain with me and end up putting that back on my baby? Because your baby is going to be very receptive to your experience. When you tell them what it was like when they came into the world, they're going to ask you someday. And you need to have thought about what you learned and how you can see this not from the place of victimhood, but rather from a place of strength. And so that is the first step, I think, for a lot of women, or for all women, I would say. And I also think that this plays a really big role in postpartum depression. There's definitely a physical component to postpartum depression. We know that there's a huge drop in your hormones, and that is probably one of the main reasons. But there's also a psychosocial component for postpartum depression, one where, we live in a society that's more solitary than ever before. This nuclear family we've created, a lot of people are raising children away from their family, so they don't have that community support that we would have once had when taking care of a tiny human. And then on the other side of it is having to process through a really difficult experience for many women, something that wasn't expected or wasn't the way that we planned it to go. And so I think this is the first step, I think, because sometimes it can be very hard to even think about food or think about nutrition or have the energy to get through your day if you haven't worked through a bit of this mental, emotional healing to get to a place where you feel solid, you have a better understanding of why things happen the way they did, and kind of a coming to terms with whatever way your birth journey went. So for me, in my healing journey, I found it very helpful to think about, what is it that my baby is here to teach me? She chose me as her mama, and I didn't choose anything about the way that my birth story went or her birth story went. So what was it about that that gives me an opportunity to learn and to grow? And so I had planned so much, as I mentioned, for this beautiful home birth. And instead, I had a cesarean section and I was induced in the hospital. And so instead of falling into victimhood, I started to rethink and reframe, okay, well, you know, as a previous hospital nurse, I had lost a lot of faith in Western medicine. I had seen so many patients that I helped for a period of time and then they came back and with the same problem over and over again. And so for me, this was actually almost like a reminder of just how valuable Western medicine can be and how important it can be as well. That was my first lesson and kind of my first takeaway from this experience. The second one is to relinquish control. And I know that for many women in the world, having control, or just people in general, having control over our lives and having a feeling that we have some control over how things go is really important to us. I think especially when it comes to things that are unknown, like giving birth. We don't know exactly how that's going to go or whether it will be painful, whether how our body will handle it. And so I think we try to control everything we can in those situations. And so this was a lesson for me in relinquishing control and remembering that sometimes life has different plans for us than we have for ourselves. And sometimes the more we fight, the harder things become. So while I think there's great value in fighting for what you believe in and really pushing for something, like I pushed very, very hard to try to have that home birth because I had a lot of good scientifically backed reasons that I believe that's a better place to give birth to babies. It's safer, there's less bacteria, there's less chance of infection, it's much more peaceful, it's calm, you're in your own home environment. You don't have this interruption with this first connection with your baby. So that is kind of my soapbox about home birth and why I think it's so wonderful when it works. But in this situation, it's an opportunity to revisit what life has given to us and find a way to see the positive and see the upside. And so for me, I fought so hard for having my birth go the way, my daughter's birth go the way that I wanted it to go. I probably did both of us a disservice because we went so long without pain medication that my whole body was so tense. It could barely relax into any contractions. It could hardly let go and allow her to be released into the world. And so we need to know, we need to be able to fight when we want to fight and when it's worth fighting for, but we also need to be able to relax into the process and let things be when necessary. And so that was one of my big lessons from this birth experience. So that's my first piece of postpartum healing. And if you're listening to this and you're pregnant, I hope that you take this and you can be reminded of these valuable thoughts when you're in the birth process or when you're just postpartum, because there's a lot going on postpartum. Your body feels different, your brain feels different, you're completely exhausted. You have a tiny human that you've never met that you're hopefully absolutely in love with. Although I know sometimes it feels hard to feel that way because of all of the hormones that we have floating around. So, wherever you're at, I think this is always going to be a good and helpful practice, no matter how your birth story went. Now, from there, we can talk a little bit about more of the physical side of healing, things we can do to help boost our physical healing because birth is it's a marathon. It takes a lot out of us for most women. Most women don't have this like magical fairy tale movie birth that takes an hour and we push the baby out and la la la, everything's done and it's fine. For me, it was almost 3 days of labor, and for a lot of women, it's similar. So that takes a lot out of us. In addition to the fact that if you had birth vaginally, your whole body has been stretched and changed, and you had a whole organ that was massive and now it's shrinking down again. If you had a cesarean section like I did, then you just had a surgery. That's a really, really big thing. There are many layers of tissue and muscle that have to be cut through to deliver a baby in that situation. And so there's a lot of healing that needs to take place. So, from a biological and a physiological perspective, one of the best things we can do is have plenty of protein. We know there's actually a lot of research that shows having sufficient protein can speed healing. So, for muscle maintenance, we say about 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight for muscle maintenance. But this is a situation where we actually need to grow again. We're not just in a muscle maintenance. So I would say closer to like 1.8 grams per kilogram of your body weight of protein is going to be really, really great if we can get that much every day. This is also important because if you're breastfeeding, that's an extra 300 to 400 calories a day that it takes for your body to produce that breast milk. That's actually more than it took in pregnancy. So we really need to be eating enough. This is also going to help with postpartum depression and healing our brain and rebuilding all of those neurotransmitters and those hormones because we use amino acids as building blocks of all of our neurotransmitters, and they also go into many of our hormones. The other thing that really helps rebuild our hormonal state is healthy fats. Cholesterol is a building block of all of our sex hormones, so we really need those healthy fats to help rebuild and refine our balanced state in this completely new environment that we're now living in. So, whether or not you had a vaginal birth or a C section, really thinking about replenishing our tissue, replenishing with protein, with lots of healthy fats, and ideally eating a rainbow of antioxidants as much as possible. So, we can think about more of an ancestral diet here. If you've ever heard of a paleo diet, it would be something like this, where we're having a good animal protein. If you eat animal protein, grass fed meat, grass fed beef is really great. Eggs, seafood, those are all going to be higher in healthy fats and a lot of good vitamins. Eggs have choline, which we know actually helps um, form the brain, shape the brain for pregnant women and for newborn babies. So, having eggs and seafood, things like that, are going to be really helpful. In addition, you can keep taking a prenatal vitamin. So if you were taking, well, you should have hopefully been taking a prenatal when you were pregnant, but you can keep taking that prenatal after birth and it's going to help replenish your stores. It's not just a prenatal, it can be a postnatal as well. The other things that I think are really helpful and important as far as supplements go are vitamin D. If you are not eating very much fish, then having some fish oil, having some good healthy fats. One of the first signs that we are deficient in healthy fats is getting dry skin. And I know my skin was super dry after birth. So I loaded up on adding in an omega-3 supplement, and that seemed to really give my body an extra boost. Magnesium is also really great. Your muscles have been through a lot, so giving them some extra love and a little hug and helping them relax is another great thing we can do. I love magnesium glycinate because it's also really nourishing for the nervous system. So it can really help calm the body because your body's been through a lot. And so it can be more difficult to actually go into that rest state. Your amygdala, which is kind of that alarm part of your brain, is if you're a mom, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to see it, is now pretty much permanently turned on. We're going to be, for the rest of our lives, very aware of where our child is. Is our child safe? What's going on around us? And that is a survival mechanism to make sure that our babies survive. But it does mean that it actually becomes a bit harder to rest. It's a double-edged sword. It's really great because it helps us wake up quickly at night when we hear our baby cry, but it's also the thing that can make you spring out of bed with a panic attack when you hear your baby cry in the middle of the night, even when they're totally fine. So giving your nervous system some extra love with something like magnesium glycinate is also really great. Or you can do like the calm magnesium. There's a calm magnesium you can dissolve in water and have that before bed. That's also really nice and really calming. Um, Nuts and seeds, berries, lots of antioxidants, all the greens and the good fruits and veggies you can get are going to be really, really great. And then finally, drinking lots of water. Water is something that our body desperately needs to maintain its balance. I really love to add trace minerals to my water because we probably don't get enough through our food. And truth be told, I think it's actually quite hard to eat enough in the postpartum period. Even if you have friends and family helping you with meals, you're just so busy and life. I mean, yes, a newborn baby does sleep a lot, but your body and your mind and everything is adjusting to this new way of being. And so I think it's harder to slow down and make a meal and rest and just eat. And so, whatever we can do to help give our body some extra nutrients is going to be great. So, I really love trace minerals. It's actually like a little bottle that you can put drops into your water. It tastes a bit like the sea. But I find those really nourishing and really great. You can do other things like just adding some electrolytes. There's lots of different electrolyte additions to water now, or even a pinch of sea salt, because sea salt is really rich in lots of minerals, not just salt. You can add that to your water as well. And that's a nice, super cheap way to get some extra electrolytes into your water. So that is our quick episode for today. And that's really just giving you an idea of what to expect and what to think about. And if you're longer postpartum, like I am, I'm about a year and a half out from having my baby. And to be honest, I think it's really only about now, maybe after the first year of life, that I started being able to really think about, like, okay, what does my body need now to get back to its balance point? We've gotten through this first year. It was a little crazy moments. There were a lot of calm moments, but a lot of really busy moments. And I was so focused on caring for this new little tiny human. I wasn't very focused on caring for myself. So, if you're listening to this and you're newly postpartum or you're still pregnant, then take this one piece of advice that I didn't take as much, which is really prioritize you. Because, mama, your baby is going to feel everything you feel. You are their window into what's going on in the world around them. They're looking to you to see how to respond to life. And you having a nourished body, a calm nervous system, getting the rest you need, it's going to really help them regulate their bodies. If you are overtired and undernourished and feeling a little bit spread too thin and frantic, your baby can pick up on that and they're going to feel that too. And so there's no shame. I'm not shaming here at all. I'm just helping you see that managing your internal state and doing whatever it takes for you to find that happy place should be one of your top priorities in this postpartum period and one of the top priorities of the people around you. So, asking your partner, asking your family, asking your other children, if you have other children, to really help you in this process, enrolling them in this process is going to be really big as well. So, I hope this was helpful and maybe a bit interesting for you if you're curious what postpartum healing is like. Everyone's journey is different. Some women really have a lot of physical healing. Some women bounce back physically, but have a lot of mental, emotional healing. It really depends on where you're starting and just the baby you had and the journey you had, and, maybe how nutritionally fortified you were before as well. But what is important is that no matter where you're at, you can always find the levers that make the biggest difference for you and move you in the right direction. And for some women, that does mean taking a medication, and that's okay too. There's no shame in that. You need to do, like I said, what's going to give you your balance, because your baby is looking to you to find its balance state, its new sort of nervous system point zero. And so finding that for yourself should be your top priority. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.